and welcome back to The Ethical Entrepreneur, a speaker series that introduces you to the experts in sustainable and ethical business and the tips and tricks to turn your business into a force for good. I'm Marika Timmers, and today I'm speaking with Sam Stubbs from Simplicity, which is New Zealand's lowest priced Kiwisaver fund. Now, when I was putting this summit together, I was committed to finding someone doing finance differently because having spent over a decade in the industry myself, I know there's a way to go to bring purpose, people, and the planet back into the heart of finance. And then I found Sam, and all hope was restored. So welcome, Sam. Thank you for being here.
Hi. Thank you very much.
So as founder and managing director of Simplicity, you're responsible for over $2.5 billion of New Zealand funds under management. And it's my understanding that none of that is invested in activities that damage the environment or people's livelihoods. And your ethical investment guidelines also exclude any companies breaching UN principles. So why do you think it's important these days for any company, finance or outside of it, to have guiding principles, not just in the way that they manage their people and products, but also in the way that they manage their money?
Sure. Well, look, I think there are a whole bunch of reasons why, and they all add up to a very compelling story. I think that in the first instance, if you think about the finance industry and managing money and so on, what a finance industry which was really serving people, what would it be doing? Well, how we think about it is that it would be giving people dignity. In fact, we call ourselves a dignity company, not a finance company. So dignity company. And what we mean by that is when people have dignity in life, it means usually that they have choices. Choices gives you dignity. You choose where you live, what you eat, holidays, all that sort of thing. So if you have choices, you have dignity. So if you're going to give people dignity, you give them choices. How do you give people choices? Money. Money helps you, money allows you to buy things and that gives you choices and dignity. So if you think about a finance company that is doing the best for its members and for society, it's one that's giving people dignity, choices, and money. So let's think about making money. So if you think about operating ethically, both in terms of the way you manage your money and operate your company, for us, it's all about making people wealthier. So we have all of these lovely things that we do, but we do them for a very specific reason, that our members will be wealthier at the end of it. So how do you turn ethics into money? Well, it's actually very simple, really. If you think about it from a consumer point of view, it's how people increasingly want to live their lives. They want to feel as if the consumption decisions they make, where their money is invested, the company they work for, all of those things have a social purpose. So if that's where human energy is going, if you're investing in that human energy, you're likely to get better returns. And so, you've seen that very, very clearly in the last, it's 5 years now, where, let's call them ethical funds, have been outperforming non-ethical funds. And I know there's lots of different definitions there, but basically making those decisions has been a very sensible decision to make in terms of returns. That's the first reason. The second reason is if you think about what makes a great company and what makes a great enterprise, to our mind, there are really only three things. The first one is an idea, right? So you have a really, really good idea. The second one is money. You need money to make that idea happen. And the third one is the people. You need people to apply the money to make the idea a great business. So let's just think about those three things for a second. The first one is the idea. Now, the thing about ideas is there really are no new ideas. I mean, if you're in raw science, there is, but this thing here, the cell phone, has every idea in the world on it, right? So even though people say they've got a new idea, very often it's just someone else's idea, and this is simplicity. We have no new ideas. We just bring what works overseas here to New Zealand. So ideas are everywhere now. Money is also everywhere as well. There's a whole lot more money going to venture capital, new ideas. Kiwisaver managers have $76 billion now. This is, they had nothing 13 years ago. So there's lots of money for a new idea. So the ideas are everywhere. The money is increasingly available. What is the differentiating feature? It's always the people. Great companies are always formed by great people. And so if you think about getting the best people, well, you had better be appealing to their better angels, because if you appeal to greed and short-term drivers and exploitation or apathy or ignorance, you're going to get a certain sort of person, but that's not the person who's going to build a great company. It's just not going to work that way. So if you think about it from building a business, a social enterprise point of view, you had better operate that way and then you will attract the very best people to work for you. And, listen, as you can see, I'm an old fossil, right? But the people who are driving this business are young people, and they are way smarter than my generation. They want to work for a fair compensation. Of course, they need to work for money. We all need to live. But they also want their lives and their careers and getting up every day to have some meaning and some purpose. So we have the most amazing employees, and we also have 62 volunteers as well. So we get, legal services, marketing, PR, all those sort of things donated to us by the very best practitioners in the market. I mean, they're just amazing people, and Simplicity for them is it's almost like their charitable play, because we give 15% of our fees to charity. They know that we will make a scalable difference to the charitable environment in New Zealand, so they give us their time. So you think about it from that point of view, it makes more money, it gets the very best people to drive your economy. And here's the third thing. If you think about a motivator in life, what gets you up in the morning and makes you feel good? Well, there is something really nice about knowing you're working for an organization that's purposeful, if you're working for us, that your money is invested in something which is purposeful, if you are an investor with us, or if you're a supplier to us. So say, these people, I get a good feeling about dealing with Simplicity. So, it's a total winning strategy at every level.
The perfect business model.
Well, it's just, and it, you know it in your heart, right? If it feels good at whatever level, it probably is good. And people are really smart. They work these things out, So now we don't have an accounting system or an investment return system which necessarily is subtle enough to account for these things. It's hard to quantify those things. Mm-hmm. Except that it all comes out in the wash, doesn't it? Because you see it in investment returns. We are consistently ranked number 1 or number 2 in the country now for investment returns, depending on your time period. Why is that? We don't do anything special. We just make ethical investment decisions. We exclude a whole lot of stuff that we won't invest in. We operate as a social enterprise. We charge the lowest fees, and hey presto, you get better returns. So it works out eventually. And by the way, there's nothing special or magical about what Simplicity does. It's a very easy business model. Anyone could replicate it. It occurs all over the world. We've just brought it to New Zealand. So, and I think that's the case for a lot of ethical and social enterprises, that actually it's not hard. It's just choosing to do it and then appealing to people's better angels. And it works out.
And I guess if the investments are paying off, then these are businesses that are being successful, right?
Sure. I mean, if you're investing in a business which is not thinking about the environment, sustainability, ethical operations, treating its employees well and all that, people just aren't going to buy the stuff. The world now is so much more transparent. You just don't get away with the sort of things now that you used to get away with when I was your age, right? Because people only got their information from 2 or 3 sources. If it wasn't in the papers, you didn't know about it, right? Now, people just get exposed for these things. So, we have this phrase, the truth and transparency are our friends. But there are a lot of business models that require apathy and ignorance. Mm-hmm. They require that of their customers. They want their customers to be in the dark, dumb, and so on. I'll give you an example. And the finance industry is terrible for this. Think about all those bank billboards that you see. They all have happy families jumping off swimming pools, right? Give us your money, we'll look after it. The subliminal message to that is money is difficult and hard. Just give it to us and we'll sort it out for you, and then you can go back to having a nice life. That's basically saying, we want you to stay dumb. We want you to give us your money and we'll look after it. And of course, that's why finance industry is the most profitable industry in New Zealand by far, right? So because it trades on ignorance and apathy. So, but that is not the future of business. That is why, if you look at the institutions that are losing market share, that are losing customers, they're those ones that are trading on apathy and ignorance. And there's a whole lot of other things there as well, right? There's, payday lenders. There are just some terrible, a lot of insurance companies trade on, insurance is complex. Let's make it as complex and as difficult as possible so that you need me to navigate your way through this.
Yeah.
It's dumb.
Yeah. No, I started my career in investment banking. It was all about baffling.
Totally. But it's not the future. And the finance industry is probably one of the last industries that has woken up to the fact that the truth and transparency generally are not their friends. Mm-hmm. And they'd better make them their friends pretty quickly. Because the interesting thing about the finance industry is it doesn't produce a single widget. There's not a single thing that you can touch and feel and hold in your hand. It's all zeros and ones and ideas and concepts. And what we've discovered with that is that, ironically, those are the last things to be changed, but you cannot escape history.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really liked what you said about, money being one of those three things, because quite often, with some of the ethical entrepreneurs that I deal with, there's this mindset about money that if we're making money, there's an evil around money, but it is a necessary evil if it's evil, right?
Yeah, sure.
It doesn't need to be seen that way.
Yeah, no, not at all. In fact, you can be incredibly ethical and incredibly rich. Those things are not if you are providing your customers a fantastic service and you happen to benefit from scale or lower cost or whatever, and the benefits come to you, being rich is not evil. Ipso facto, it depends on how you made it, not whether you made it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So Simplicity is a non-profit fund manager, and I'll be honest, it feels like a bit of an oxymoron in today's world. Yeah. How does the business model work? And do you, we've talked about this a little bit, but how quickly do you see that shifting towards more ethical models in the future?
So look, I think, so we're a non-profit for a couple of reasons. First of all, there's a very good example of this overseas, an organization called Vanguard, who are the second biggest asset manager in the world. They manage $9 trillion now. Yeah. And they're a non-profit. So you can do this. You don't have to make money for yourself in order to make money for customers. So there's already a model of this overseas. But the other reason we did it this way is we're actually, Simplicity is owned by a charity, and it owns a non-profit company, and the non-profit company charges fees, doesn't make a profit, but gives 15% of those fees up to the charity. That, by the way, is the Southern Cross model. So we're just modelled on Southern Cross here in New Zealand. They're a charity as well, owned by a charity. Now, the great thing about that is, and why we structured it that way is, if you're not making $1, that means you're not worth $1. And if you're not worth $1, that means you'll never be bought or sold. So we set up Simplicity to deliberately be around for 100 years, to never be worth anything, right? And to give it all back to the members. So if you have a look at Southern Cross here in New Zealand, they've been around for 75 years. They've never been bought or sold because they're not worth anything, right? Mm-hmm. But Southern Cross have 75% market share in health insurance. So you can be incredibly competitive and really competitive. In fact, super competitive, because you don't need to make a profit, as long as you run yourself like a business. So everything about Simplicity looks and feels like any other fund manager, except that we're not in the business of making money for ourselves, we're in the business of making money for our members. So we have a huge competitive advantage.
Yeah.
We have way lower fees, which means you get higher returns. We have a whole bunch of people working for us as volunteers. We have a very, very sustainable business model. Remember, in finance, you hardly need any capital, right? So I set up Simplicity by selling the batch, and the batch funded Simplicity, but no more. It didn't need a lot more money than that, right? And yet here we are, an organization with, 55,000 members and $2.7 billion, and that's from zero. That's 4 years later, right? So you get huge scale quickly by investing almost no money. So so that's how we've structured it. So it's deliberately designed to be around for 100 years. Now, the great thing about that too is that we think about investing in terms of investing over a very long period of time. We are deliberately the tortoise. You know how entrepreneurs like to feel like they're the hare, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're done around faster. Well, we don't want to be that. We're very happy to be the tortoise. We just move very slowly, very deliberately, and as long as we're delivering value, we know it will work in the end. Or you might want to call us, maybe we're a tortoise that wants to become an elephant, but either way, right, we'll be moving very slowly and deliberately. And when you're a non-profit, you have the advantage of that longevity of thinking. And that also matters a lot in terms of the way we invest money. One of the reasons that we do so well is because we don't really care what's happening short term. We don't worry about whether the market's going up or down or whatever. We know that we just stay very diversified. We charge the lowest fee, and we have this thing called, we try to scoop the crumbs off the table. Just little bits of savings everywhere adds up to a whole lot of money. And if we look after our members, and it really works out well. So it's a very, this is the interesting thing about it. A lot of people think about entrepreneurialism as being exciting, new, fresh. Sometimes being an entrepreneur can mean you're just doing something boring, methodical, disciplined. It doesn't have to be exciting and jumping around. You can be an incredibly successful entrepreneur by doing, as long as you enjoy it. Doesn't matter if it's not the latest.
That's right. I mean, the exciting piece is how you're changing other people's lives. Right? Yeah.
Well, think about my food bag, right? There's another classic. I mean, totally adore Lisa. She works with simplicity too.
Yeah.
There's no romance in packing thousands of lunches every day, but the people doing it love what they do.
Absolutely.
Making lunches.
Yeah.
So making and distributing lunches, it's hardly the sexiest thing in the world to do. But my goodness, what a difference, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah. And just for those of you not in New Zealand, a batch is a holiday home.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I love that.
Small, rundown holiday home.
So, being a non-profit is one thing, but as you mentioned, Simplicity also gives 15% of its fees back to the Simplicity Charitable Trust.
Yeah.
Which supports a wide range of charities. Corporate social responsibility is something that most major banks do and corporations do these days. It's obviously seen as good for business. And if that's the only reason why it's being done, my philosophy, I guess, is that if it's, as long as it's making a difference, it can't be a bad thing. What are your thoughts on CSR more generally, and what makes one program better than others?
Look, I think CSR is a huge issue, right? But let's talk about, for example, corporate philanthropy in the first instance. Because I think corporate philanthropy, in most cases, the decision made at the board, and I've been, on the boards of big companies and made these decisions, the decision is the philanthropy really comes out of the marketing budget. So this is not, do we really care? It's, we need to be seen to be caring, right?
Yeah.
So there's a substitute effect there. And you know that because the philanthropy is usually a tiny fraction of the marketing.
And sometimes in conflict with the purpose of the business. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I'll give you an example here in New Zealand is, there is some very high profile philanthropy in search and rescue in New Zealand. Where my understanding is the amount of money spent advertising the fact that they give the money away is more than the amount of money they actually give away, right? So philanthropy is not part of their DNA, it's part of their marketing strategy, right? Now, the interesting thing about that is, and I understand, I've been involved in that decision-making, you can see why it works that way. But when you run a social enterprise, it's interesting how the giving can actually be a massive competitive advantage. I'll give you the case with Simplicity. So we give away 15% of our fees to charity. That does two amazing things for us. First of all, is it brings in this incredible cost discipline. So that 15% is just a cost. It is a cost of doing business. That's how we have to think about that. It's because we get our fees, we pay our costs. We can't make any money. We've got to give 15% to charity. So that gives us a discipline internally because we just can't do certain stuff because we've got to give it to the charity, right? Now, in business, the decision about what you don't do is as important as the decision about what you do. So we say no to a lot of things because we give that money away. But here's the other thing. I'll show you this. You're actually in our sort of meeting room. This is the Simplicity begging bowl. It's a bowl, right? Because we're a charity, I get to ask everybody for something for nothing or less than anyone else, right? So I say, listen, we might be a finance company, but we're a charity. We don't make any money. So I'm begging you for a lower price, right? It's a huge competitive advantage. So we generally pay less for all of our services than all of our competitors because people know we're a non-profit and profit, and they know we're a charity. That's the second advantage, right? So there's a cost discipline. It gives you a competitive advantage. And here's the third thing, as I think I mentioned it before. We have a huge number of volunteers. We basically, and these are all professionals. These are lawyers, accountants, marketing, PR. They are all giving 1 or 2 or 3% of their time as the charity play because they know that if Simplicity gets to be really big, we will give a lot of money to charity. So in 4 years, we've gone from zero to we're giving away $100,000 a month now to charity. Our intention is to be giving over $1 million a month. That'll make us one of the bigger charities in New Zealand, right? And that is easily achievable, you know. And if we have, we've got 2% market share now. After 4 years, if we have 10% market share, we'll be giving away well in excess of $1 million a month. So if you think about that, if you think about the cost discipline, if you think about the ability to get cheaper service providers and a lot of stuff for free, it's turned out to be a significant competitive advantage. I way underestimated this. You know, people say, what's different from what you expected? This is the big difference. I never appreciated how much being a social enterprise and a charity gave us a huge competitive leg up. Because, by the way, we also tell our members that, right? Yeah. We tell our members, please tell your friends because we don't want to spend your money on marketing. And the more scale we get, the lower the fees are. So about between 60 and 80% of our new members come from just referrals from friends and family. You know, we exit poll them and ask them, where did you hear about us? Friends and family, friends and family, friends and family. Well, that's the cheapest and best marketing of all, right? Particularly in financial services, because most people typically tell you what brand of shoe to buy because they know it's not going to really hurt them. But if they tell you what financial services provider to use, that's a really big deal. You are personally risking something when you recommend it, right? Because it's people's money you're talking about. So it's a huge competitive advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And do you think as more business models like Simplicity's pop up, is there going to be a tipping point where there are less people prepared to give for free or at a discounted rate because actually the majority of businesses are asking for that now?
Well, look, I think you can generally put the businesses into two camps. I think the ones that are more likely to have a social enterprise model where, you know, the social enterprise or the ethical nature of that business becomes less and less of a competitive advantage is where you need less capital, less money. So if you're in an IT or tech or financial services or whatever, where you don't need huge amounts of capital to compete, I think it'll become a little bit more muddied. You know, you'll start to get what virtue signaling and virtue washing or whatever you want to call it, right? In industries where you need a lot of capital, a lot of money, where you've got to buy trucks, build buildings, you know, where stuff is expensive to compete, that is far more going to stay in the for-profit model because you need to be able to return money to the people who are investing all of that money in, right? So you need to have a for-profit model there. So I don't think you're going to get too many amazingly ethical or social enterprise transport companies or warehouses or, you know, distribution businesses or whatever. But in all these other things, way more so. Now, the irony of that is, of course, you think high tech, you think high profit, right? You think high tech, you think Google, Facebook, or, you know, unicorns and people making a fortune. The irony of that is, and Simplicity is a pretty high tech business these days. Interestingly enough, high tech is the industry that I think most lends itself to social enterprise. And if you have a look at the youngest, smartest, I call them kids out there. I know you, but I'm that old. The youngest and smartest kids out there, to my mind, they have been seduced by the idea of making a lot of money. But fundamentally, I think if you presented them with the option which said, here is a chance to make a massive difference for your life to have meaning, and here is fair compensation for what you do, I think that is going to attract an awful lot of talent.
Yeah.
those businesses will be very stable and secure. We have no problem hiring amazing IT people here. And the deal we say to them is this: we're going to pay you fairly. You're not going to get rich here, but you're going to get paid fairly, and you're going to make a massive difference.
Yeah.
And that seems to work at every level. I don't think we've ever put a job ad out, actually. I think it's all been just, once again, word of mouth.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it all comes back to that purpose, doesn't it? And you were saying earlier, that next generation are actually very purpose-led.
Oh, your generation are way smarter than mine. Mine were a greedy generation who smoked and had ideas, racist and sexist ideas permeating through society. It was crazy. We're Neanderthals, Stone Age people. Your generation is just way smarter, and really smart people work out that it's not all about money.
Yeah.
That money is an important and vital part of life, and you've got to have enough. But after you've got enough, it rapidly diminishes, and that's been my personal journey too. I've had lots of money in my life, and along with the extra money came additional dollops of misery and anxiety and tension and all that sort of stuff. So I've simplified my life dramatically in that regard, and I'm much happier for it. Your generation have worked that out already. You didn't have to go through the journey of, I grew up in this sort of neo-capitalist 1980s greed is good bullshit, actually. Your generation is way smarter.
I think I'm older than you think I am. But I'll take the compliment, Sam.
Look pretty young to me. Look pretty young to me.
So this is final question, just to wrap up. And it's one that I ask a lot of my speakers, because there are a lot of people in the audience that are obviously really, right at the beginning of their entrepreneurial journey. So let's just talk about the time that you've been, working with Simplicity, and I believe you're nearly 5 years into that journey. Probably something you thought about for a lot longer than that. But if you knew then what you know now, what would you do differently?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, I think two things differently. One is I would not be ashamed to ask for everything.
Yeah.
I would, what you are doing, even if it's for a for-profit organization, if you feel in your heart that what you are doing is ethical and responsible and the right thing for society, you should climb over the table to say, if you work with us, if you support us, this is what we will achieve, but this is what I need from you. So I'll give you some example. We did some contracts. We had to write contracts. The best contracts we wrote were the ones that said, listen, I'll commit to you for 10 years. If you give us your time and energy here up front, you will get richly rewarded at the end. And those contracts now are just starting to richly reward the people who bet on us initially, right? If you ask for that, you're going to attract the right sort of person, because you want someone to invest in you. You want someone to put their energy in. And that creates a relationship of trust and reward, which is fantastic for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be ashamed in saying, this is what I need. Don't be ashamed to ask for the earth, I guess, would be the first thing. Because what you are doing is a good thing. And so you want good people to identify with that, and 1 + 1 will equal 3. So that would be the first thing I would do. The second thing that I would say was, it's going to take you 2 to 3 times longer than you think, but don't worry about that. It's going to happen. If there is if what you are doing is fundamentally right, and you are aggressive in wanting that to come to fruition, it will happen. So, and there are going to be many points along the journey at which you challenge your own thinking, you question your own judgment, you think, have I done the right thing here? This is all very hard. I had a time there where, the cash drain from our business was pretty scary, right? And I was saying, wow, I've hired this people. I'm going to be worth nothing in in a year or two if we carry on doing this, but I know that it's right. So what I would say is keep the faith. Keep the faith.
Back yourself. Yeah.
And trust yourself. If you will know in your heart whether it's right or not, and just listen to your heart, because sometimes your head is going to try and trick you, into thinking back out. You'll get risk aversion and all this sort of stuff. So that'll be my two things: be aggressive and trust yourself. And you'll be amazed what happens. Most, I've been here doing this for 4.5 years now, and pretty much every other ethical entrepreneur comes through our office, right? And the ones I saw in the first 2 or 3 years, when we're all going, we're all sharing each other's concerns, pretty much every single one of them has succeeded. So by the time you get to that point of committing, and I have this phrase we call burning the ships. I don't know if you know this. It was in the invasion of, I know I'm going to get some names wrong here. I'm sorry. I studied ancient history and I probably forgot it. But when Troy was invaded, the invaders, they landed on a beach, and then their general burned the ships because he didn't want, he basically said, you're committed now. You have to invade that town.
Right.
Otherwise you don't eat. Otherwise you're going to die, right? Because you can't go back. So those people who burned their ships have committed, followed their heart, they've succeeded, and that's also aided them in asking, right? Because if you don't ask, you don't get, and if you need to ask because you're so committed, you'll ask. And it's amazing how many people say yes. I don't know about the rest of the world, but New Zealand is an amazing place where people want to help.
Yes.
If they can, they want to help. And all they need to do is to be asked. What I've discovered is that if you appeal to people's better angels, because effectively what I'm saying is, could you help us here because it will do this amount of good? What those people who are helping us are also saying, that will make me feel good too. Mm-hmm. They're operating in a sense selfish. They've got a selfish motivation there, which is they want to feel good too. Often they just need to be asked.
Yeah, that's been my experience even pulling this summit together. So, yeah. Cool. Is there anything else, Sam, before we go, that you wanted to mention about simplicity? We do have, a decent-sized audience here in New Zealand.
Sure. Well, look, we're, I'll just give you a 30-second pitch right now. Look, we're obviously the ethical player out there. We're a non-profit. We're now saving people $20 million a year in fees, so that's about $350 each. We're giving $100,000 to charity. We're investing ethically, and the bigger we get, the more people save. All of the economies of scale go back to our members. So if I just ask one thing of you, just please go and find out about us, and then if you like what you see, just talk about us. And and if we do good stuff, the karma will come around and we'll do better. So, but Absolutely. We just love you to know and talk about us and make up your own mind.
Thanks so much for your time today. It's been a great chat. Nice to to talk philosophies and connect that with money as well. It doesn't always happen.
And lovely to talk to an audience. The fact that you're listening to this means your heart's in the right place and you're curious, which is just lovely. So
absolutely. When I left the world of finance 5 years ago, it was because my values were no longer aligned with most of the industry, and it took me a while to work that out. So I'm really pleased to see that this is shifting, and I'm really excited to see if there is anyone in our audience who is also looking to tackle these issues. If that is you, please drop me an email. I would love to support you. If it's not you, I hope the interview is giving you some considerations for how and where you can invest your money more ethically and sustainably. Tomorrow, we'll be swapping financial investment for climate investment. We'll be talking carbon offsetting and how we make it simple and affordable for businesses. Don't miss it. I'll see you all again then soon. Bye.